Well, with Harry Potter coming to an end, I figure now is a good time to review the one magical thing I actually have in my collection. From Mahou Sentai Magiranger and the Joint Gattai series, I give you MagiKing. Now, being a Joint Gattai figure, that does mean this is part of the Legends series of toys, meaning it is a budget line. That being said, while I will point out the differences from the DX version of the toy, we will not be judging it based on what the DX toy has that this one does not. To do otherwise would be horribly unfair considering this goes for half the cost of the large one. So, all of that said, we're going to look at these one by one very quickly before we get to the main event. We start off with the red mecha, of course. This is Maji Phoenix. Now, he probably suffers the most from the lack of paint apps. You can see all the molded detailing is in the toy. Looking at the head sculpt, you can see they painted in the eyes, and all the feathery details along the side of the head are present. All the molded lines are present. You can see a little bit of detail on the collar was molded in very well. However, the lack of paint does mask a lot of it. The arms are kind of hard to see against the bright red. He does have some silver there, which does break it up very nicely, but really he did need some paint on the chest to really bring him out a little bit more. Or better yet, he probably could have done the same thing that Ranger Keys do and paint in all the stuff that isn't robot. You know, some black paint along the sides of the legs and around the arms would have really brought out a lot of the details better and made him look more like a solid figure. As a molded toy, he does a decent job of looking like Maji Phoenix, and thanks to the way he does come apart, you do get a waist joint out of him. But he probably is one of the ones that suffers the most in this set. The rest, well, we'll see if we're upgrading from here. Next up, Maji Mermaid. The blue here is actually a little bit darker than the original toy from the pictures I can see. Detailing again is all spot on. Everything's there, it's just not painted to see very well. Even the hands are molded here in at the sides, which is actually, there we go. That's a little easier to see. So all the detailing is there. In person, it is far easier to see than it is on the camera, admittedly. She is in mermaid mode, and no, you can't fold the feet down in order to complete it, since Joint Gattais don't have any hinges. That's to allow for the socket joints, which we will get to momentarily. You can see the paint on the side of the arms, as well as all the way through the waist area, and the entire tail all the way around in silver. She gets a lot of paint apps that will eventually go into MagiKing, and for that she gets a lot more color variety than some of the others. And while, yeah, that's a really wide mermaid tail, she does come out one of the better ones of the set as a result. At the very least, she's one of the most colorful. Next, Maji Garuda. This one's going to be a little difficult because, well, his arms are kind of long. I'm going to have his arms folded down just so I can hold him up this close to the camera. You can see here, the beak and the neck is painted in the silver, as well as the green for the eyes, and his belt has been painted in. But as far as his body goes, that's pretty much it. Now, unlike Maji Red, he does have the advantage, and I'll reposition his wings so you can keep seeing it. He does have the advantage of his parts being independently molded apart from each other, because, well, thanks to the way he combines for MagiKing mode, he doesn't need big solid chunks behind his legs. So he actually does have a big advantage there. Again, all the molding is there. He could really use a silver trim around the M on his chest in order to bring that out. Where he really does shine is the fact that, as you've probably noticed by now, thanks to the way he's jointed, he does have shoulder rotation, just like a full-sized Megazord or Sentai mech would. A lot of the paint apps went into those wings, which do look great, and is going to come in handy once we finally combine them. But individually, this is probably my favorite of the set, because the way he's jointed, you can reposition his wings and get a fully splayed pose out of him. Now, he's quite unbalanced, unfortunately, when you do this, but you can have him flying with his wings spread, and it actually does look quite cool. Of all of the figures in the Joint Gattai line so far, this is the individual one that probably has the most going on, so I can easily forgive the lack of paint. It's actually quite a little cool figure on his own. So, we move on. Maji Taurus. This is where they had to get really creative because his design had a lot of folding bits attached to it. I will let you in on the dirty little secret to this figure, however. He kind of forms the skeleton of MagiKing if you just turn him around. So, well, that's pretty much how they get away with it. That's pretty much what he did in the original version of the toy too, but he actually had a lot more transforming to do. But you can see he is by far the biggest of the set, and since he does form MagiKing as the skeleton, he ranks in at the full 5-inch line. Again, the paint is sparse, but because he forms the bulk of MagiKing, he does get some advantages. The thighs are actually painted all the way around, and he does have a little bit more going on in the chest and the midsection. Looking at the head sculpt, you can see the bull face and eyes molded in there. I actually really think this is a clever way of putting in his horns as well, because normally they would be formed from the top here. However, because this is MagiKing's head, they have redone that to form the brim of his hat, which I thought was a really clever way of working that in and simplifying it. Now, as MagiKing's skeleton and most of his body, you do get up and down arm rotation, so you actually do get a lot more out of this than you do some of the others. And just like Maji Garuda, that comes as a major advantage. But now it's time for the inevitable, the fifth and final member, and oh boy. Maji Fairy is the inevitable downside of the 5-figure set. Because the original one was already very, very small for a Sentai mecha, shrinking it down has made it suffer considerably. As such, she's pretty much been reduced to being molded onto a leftover piece of MagiKing, which is unfortunate, but in this case, unavoidable. They did a commendable job here. I mean, her face and crest are painted, and they actually did paint the M in pink. All the detailing is there, though, honestly, I will admit, this really should have been molded in gray in order to make her look a little bit more like her actual persona on the show and in the original toy. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and she kind of gets washed out. Some are going to see this one as a flaw, but really, it's all they could do. I kind of have to forgive this one, if only because they were just really limited. Altogether, the MagiKing set will add 14 new pieces to your overall collection, some of which aren't going to be all that useful, like Garuda's body here, unless you get really creative, but some are going to present a lot of different options. For instance, the mermaid feet, which actually have a lot of little connection points on all sides of them, and most of them are actually symmetrical, meaning they could be good for arms or legs for something else, whereas you get actually quite a few extra torso options, some 2 very solid arms with 2 different looks to them, and probably the best bit, the Garuda wings. These, I can imagine coming in handy on a lot of little builds. And speaking of, no, not MagiKing yet. Actually, they went the extra mile here and actually incorporated Maji Dragon. So first, we're going to form that. Behold, Joint Gattai Maji Dragon, and I got nothing here. Now, everything you do need is there. They specifically molded the feet from Maji Taurus into dragon feet. You do have arms, though they're far bulkier than the original. You do have the tail, also bulkier, because it's not fully extended. And they did give it the wings, I will admit, but the neck being made of 2 legs does hurt, and the fact that he's missing a lower jaw. I will say he does have the teeth molded in, which is kind of difficult to see even in person, and they did fully paint the head and the eyes, and Maji Phoenix can ride him. I will admit, this mode does take some imagination. I do appreciate that they gave him the extra feature and added in the engineering that it takes to create this mode, and with a few extra parts, there is a lot of building that you could probably do off of this structure. However, as it stands on its own, this is a bonus at best, and, well, honestly, not a very good one. Yeah, this one was a little bit disappointing. I applaud the effort. I really do, and I do like that you can do something extra with this set rather than just separate them and combine them. So, that I will give credit for. However, this does feel lacking. Now that we've seen all other modes, there is just the main event to go, and considering this is a Gokaiger toy line, I think it is perfectly appropriate to do this. Fully combined MagiKing is a very impressive looking piece of plastic. Now here is where all the paint apps come together just as they did in the other two Joint Gattai figures. All of the paint from all 5 individual figures comes together here to create a very well detailed miniature version of the DX MagiKing. Now, there are a few things that do carry over, like the proportions. The arms are a little stumpy and a few things are a little thicker than you would normally expect. But that's a carryover from the original design. There's not really much to do about that, and the accuracy to the original does kind of help in a way. You know, you can see everything has been carried over really nicely. The face, very well painted. All the painting and molding is done very well, and as I said, you can see where the horns from Maji Taurus form the brim of the hat, which is a little inaccurate. But in all honesty, I think it looks better this way. All the way to the chest with the big Maji M logo there, painted on the shoulders all the way through the arms. And, of course, through the pelvis, through the legs, big paint job on the feet. Everything is here. Now, of course, just like the larger versions, the only articulation you're going to get is the head and the arms. And actually, some of the heads don't even have articulation sometimes. You also have display options. These wings, which are far smaller than the DX version, these can be removed as well as repositioned in order to be folded down and give him a more clean, more traditional look for a Megazord. Or mecha for the Sentai fans, I apologize. Old habits, trying to break them. But despite a few having shortcomings individually and a subpar dragon mode, they come together to form a very fine representation of MagiKing in all of his glory. However, this is the Joint Gattai series, so we're not done here. I'm going to indulge myself a little bit. Okay, I did admit I thought his legs would be bigger. But overall, I mean, it's 3 mecha combined. I kind of enjoyed that. Kind of like this little super MagiKing mode going here. This is what I really love about this. I mean, I only have 2 of the other figures so far. I was really waiting for Magiranger Robo to come in before I did this review, but it took its time, so I had to move along. But this is what I love about this series, mixing and combining and coming up with any combination you want, and being able to combine mechs or Zords, however you want to view them, that were never meant to combine with each other. It presents so many more play options for this series. As I said in previous reviews, the more you have, the better each one gets. It's like Lego. The more parts, the more fun. All in all, while the toy does have a few shortcomings due to being from a budget line, this is a very nice toy. I love the representation of MagiKing and love having him at such a collectible and space-agreeable size. Plus, it's the Joint Gattai series, which is a gimmick I absolutely love. As for mine, it came from HobbyLink Japan. If you want one of your own, check the link below this video. But I suspect a lot of you are going to be waiting for the next 2. Yep, 2 more drop at the end of this month. One of them is Shinken-O. The other is Daizujin, who we know as the original Megazord. Interchangeable little Megazords. This, my friends, is genius.